Your pain wasn't an accident, it was a test, and most people fail it. They broke you on purpose, systematically, repeatedly, until you believed that being hurt was just part of who you are, that kindness means suffering in silence, that boundaries make you selfish. But here's what they didn't tell you: pain is a training ground, and you just graduated. Every wound was preparing you for this moment, the moment you stop being prey and become the predator. This isn't about revenge. It's about control, cold, calculated, absolute control. Machiavelli wrote, "The prince for men who understood one truth. The world rewards those who master themselves first." The Stoics practiced it, and now you're about to learn it. 8 truths that will reprogram how you see power, pain, and dominance. By the end, you won't recognize the person you used to be, and that's the point. Let's begin. Pain was never random. It was designed. Every time someone made you doubt yourself, every moment you felt small, every wound that cut deep, that wasn't chaos. That was engineering. They taught you to fear suffering because fear makes you predictable, and predictable people are easy to manage. You learned early that crying brought comfort, that weakness earned sympathy, that vulnerability was rewarded with approval. But approval is just control dressed in kindness. The world doesn't hate your pain. It feeds on it. Pain became your weakness because you were conditioned to run from it, not to weaponize it. Emotion is the leash, and whoever holds the leash decides where you go. You've spent years reacting to pain like a trained animal. Someone hurts you, you withdraw. Someone attacks, you defend. Someone judges, you justify. This is the architecture of control: stimulus, response, consequence. Pavlov's dogs didn't know they were being trained either. The cage wasn't built with bars. It was built with guilt, with shame, with a constant need to be understood. You believed that if you could just explain yourself well enough, they'd finally see you. But manipulation doesn't care about fairness. It cares about psychology. And the psychology is simple. People who fear pain will do anything to avoid it, including surrender their power. I've watched this cycle destroy sharp minds. Talented people, intelligent people, reduced to emotional puppets because they couldn't separate feeling from thinking. They mistake reaction for strength. They confuse expression with dominance. But here's the truth nobody wants to hear. Your pain doesn't make you special. It makes you accessible. Every time you bleed in public, you're handing someone a map to your weakness. And in a world governed by survival, weakness is an invitation, not for empathy, for exploitation. The predator doesn't respect the wounded deer. He tracks it. Most people never escape this. They live their entire lives in a loop of emotional dependence, chasing validation like addicts. They need someone to acknowledge their suffering, to confirm it was real, to say, "You were wronged." But that validation never comes. Or when it does, it's hollow. Because the game was never about justice. It was about keeping you engaged, keeping you reactive, keeping you weak. Pain became your identity. And when your identity is built on wounds, you'll unconsciously seek more of them just to feel familiar. This is how the trap works. It doesn't lock you in. It makes you lock yourself in. But something shifts when you stop playing the victim. Not because you forgive, not because you heal, but because you recognize the pattern. You see the strings. You understand that every emotional reaction you've had was predicted, calculated, weaponized against you. The moment you stop seeking comfort from your pain is the moment you start building power from it. Pain doesn't have to break you, it can forge you. but only if you stop treating it like a tragedy and start treating it like data. Cold, calculated, useful. And that's when the real transformation begins. When you realize pain wasn't meant to destroy you. It was meant to prepare you. They didn't break you once. They broke you systematically, over and over until resistance felt pointless. Until you learned that speaking up only brought more punishment. Until you believed that silence was survival. This is how domestication works. You don't crush the spirit in one blow. You erode it, slowly, consistently, until the person polices themselves, until they anticipate the pain before it even arrives and adjust their behavior accordingly. That's not growth, that's conditioning. And you were conditioned to comply long before you understood what compliance meant. Every time you swallowed your anger to keep the peace, you reinforced the pattern. Every time you apologized when you weren't wrong, you taught them that boundaries don't exist with you. The most dangerous part isn't the pain itself, it's the repetition. 1 betrayal teaches you caution. 10 betrayals teach you that trust is weakness. The human mind is built to adapt, and adaptation under constant threat looks like surrender. You stopped fighting back not because you were weak, but because the cost of resistance exceeded the cost of obedience. This is basic psychology. Learned helplessness. You tried to change things and nothing changed. You tried to speak and nobody listened. So eventually, you stopped trying. And that's when they won. Not because they defeated you in battle, but because they convinced you the battle was unwinnable. Control doesn't require force when the subject controls themselves. I've seen this in every arena. Relationships where one person dictates reality and the other just nods. Workplaces where competence is punished and mediocrity rewarded until the competent stop trying. Families where emotional manipulation is so refined that questioning it feels like betrayal. The script is always the same. Hurt them when they resist, reward them when they submit, repeat until the behavior becomes automatic. And the brilliance of it is that the victim never sees it as manipulation. They see it as keeping the peace, or being mature, or choosing their battles. But those are just the names you gave to your own domestication. You weren't choosing anything. You were reacting to consequences that someone else designed. Most people live their entire lives in this cage and call it freedom. They confuse the absence of open conflict with harmony. They mistake emotional exhaustion for wisdom. I've learned to let things go, they say. But letting go implies choice. What they really mean is they've learned to absorb damage without responding. That's not strength, that's suppression. And suppression doesn't eliminate emotion, it buries it. Deep enough that you forget it's there. Until one day it erupts, messy and uncontrolled, and everyone acts surprised. But it was never surprising. It was inevitable. Because pain that isn't processed doesn't disappear. It accumulates. And accumulated pain eventually demands a reckoning. But here's what changes everything. The moment you recognize the pattern loses power. Not all of it. Not immediately. But enough. Enough for you to see that your obedience was never about morality. It was about survival in a rigged system. And survival instincts can be reprogrammed. The same brain that learned to flinch can learn to strike. The same psychology that made you predictable can make you dangerous. Because once you understand how control works, you understand how to dismantle it. Not by fighting back emotionally, but by refusing to play the game they designed. And that refusal starts with one simple shift. Recognizing that your vulnerability was never your truth. It was their weapon. You were taught that honesty builds trust. that opening up creates connection, that vulnerability is strength. And maybe in a perfect world, that's true. But you don't live in a perfect world. You live in a world where information is power and emotion is leverage. Every time you revealed a fear, a doubt, a wound, you handed someone ammunition. Not always, not everyone, but enough times that the pattern should have been obvious. The more you explained yourself, the more they knew exactly where to press. The more you shared your struggles, the more they understood your breaking points. Vulnerability isn't connection, it's exposure. And exposure, in the wrong hands, is a death sentence. People don't always weaponize your vulnerability consciously. Sometimes they do it passively, through neglect, through indifference, through using what you told them in confidence as casual conversation elsewhere, through forgetting your pain the moment it stops entertaining them. That's the insidious part. You think you're building intimacy, but you're really just becoming predictable. And predictability strips you of the one advantage you have in any power dynamic: mystery. When someone knows exactly how you'll react, they control you without effort. They know which buttons to push to get compliance, which words to use to trigger guilt, which silences to deploy to make you scramble for approval. You became a puzzle they solved. And solved puzzles don't command respect, they collect dust. I learned this the hard way, years spent believing that being understood was the ultimate goal. That if I could just articulate my position clearly enough, rationally enough, people would see my value. But manipulation doesn't operate on logic. It operates on emotion. And the more emotional data you provide, the more control you surrender. I watched people I trusted use my own words against me. Watched them twist my vulnerabilities into character flaws. Watched them perform empathy just long enough to extract information, then vanish when I needed reciprocity. That's when I understood. Vulnerability without discernment is self-destruction. Not because vulnerability itself is weak, but because most people aren't worthy of it. The world rewards those who reveal nothing and demand everything. Look at who holds power. It's never the ones spilling their hearts in public. It's the ones who operate behind walls, who respond with silence when prodded, who give just enough to seem human but never enough to be mapped. They understand what you're only beginning to learn, that every word you speak is a potential weapon against you. Every emotion you display is a handle someone can grab. The strong don't hide because they're afraid. They hide because they're strategic, because they know that in a game governed by psychology, the less your opponent knows, the more power you hold. And power doesn't explain itself. It simply exists. So what happens when you stop explaining? When you stop justifying your decisions, defending your choices, revealing your methods? At first, people will push harder. They'll accuse you of being cold, distant, unfeeling. They'll try to guilt you back into transparency because your predictability served them. But if you hold the line, something shifts. They start guessing, start projecting, start filling the silence with their own fears. And that's when you realize, the less you give, the more they assume you have. Mystery creates value. Silence creates respect, and the moment you stop trading vulnerability for approval is the moment you reclaim control, not over them, over yourself. And self-control is the only control that matters. There's a specific moment when everything changes. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, it's quiet. It happens when you stop defending yourself mid-sentence and realize the defense was never necessary. When someone attacks and you don't flinch, don't explain, don't justify. You just let the accusation hang in the air, weightless, powerless. That silence is the first crack in their control. Because manipulation requires a response. It needs you to react, to scramble, to prove yourself. When you refuse to engage, the entire system collapses. They're throwing punches at a shadow, and shadows don't bleed. This is where power begins. Not in what you say, but in what you refuse to say. Silence isn't weakness. It's the withdrawal of your participation in their game. Most people can't handle silence. It makes them uncomfortable. They'll fill it with assumptions, with accusations, with demands for explanation. Why aren't you saying anything? They'll ask. And that question is a tell. It reveals that your silence is working, that your lack of reaction is more unsettling than any argument you could make. Because when you're silent, you're unpredictable. And unpredictability disrupts dominance. The predator relies on patterns, on knowing how the prey will run. But when the prey stops running, stands still, and stares back, the dynamic shifts. Fear migrates. They realize they're not dealing with the same person anymore, and that realization is your first victory, not over them, over the version of yourself that needed their approval. I've tested this in rooms where tension was manufactured to provoke a reaction. Meetings designed to corner me, conversations structured to make me defensive, and every time I stayed silent, every time I let the discomfort sit without rushing to resolve it, I watched control transfer. The person who speaks first loses. The person who fills the silence exposes themselves. They reveal what they want, what they fear, what they're trying to manipulate you into doing. But silence gives you time. Time to observe. Time to calculate. Time to decide if this conversation even deserves your energy. Most don't. Most are traps disguised as dialogue. And the only winning move is not to play. But silence isn't passive. It's not avoidance. It's not fear. It's strategy. It's the conscious decision to withhold your reaction until you understand the full picture, to let others reveal themselves while you remain concealed. This is how you shift from reactive to proactive, from hunted to hunter, because the person who controls the pace of the conversation controls the outcome, and pace is dictated by response time. When you're slow to react, measured in your words, deliberate in your engagement, people can't predict you, can't manipulate you, can't corner you into emotional decisions that serve their agenda. You become a variable they can't solve. And unsolved variables are dangerous. Dangerous people don't get tested, they get respected or avoided. Either works. The awakening isn't about becoming cold for the sake of it. It's about realizing that your emotions were being used as leverage, and leverage only works if you give it value. When you stop assigning value to other people's opinions, their attacks lose meaning. When you stop needing validation, their approval becomes irrelevant. When you stop fearing rejection, their threats become empty. Silence is the sound of someone reclaiming their internal authority. It signals that you're no longer negotiating with external voices, that you've moved the battlefield inward, where you have total control. And once that shift happens, once you understand that silence is power, you start to see something else, something sharper, something colder. You start to see that emotion was never the problem. The problem was letting emotion dictate your response. And that's a problem you're about to solve permanently. They'll call you cold, detached, unfeeling, as if emotion is the only proof of humanity. But coldness isn't the absence of feeling. It's the refusal to let feeling make decisions for you. It's the space between stimulus and response where calculation lives, where strategy breathes. Machiavelli understood this. He wasn't advocating cruelty for its own sake. He was teaching survival in a world where sentiment gets you killed. Coldness is clarity. It's seeing people as they are, not as you wish they were. It's recognizing patterns without the fog of hope distorting your vision. When you're cold, you're not blind. You're awake. And awakeness in a world built on illusion is the ultimate advantage. Emotion clouds judgment. Clarity sharpens it. And sharp minds cut through manipulation like it's paper. The shift from emotional to cold isn't about suppression. It's about separation. You still feel, you still notice, but you don't let those feelings dictate action. Someone insults you, you feel it, register it, then decide if it's worth responding to. Most times it isn't. Someone tries to provoke you, you see the attempt, understand the psychology behind it, and choose not to participate. This is mastery, not the absence of emotion, but the dominance over it. The Stoics called it apatheia, not apathy in the modern sense, but freedom from destructive passion. The ability to witness your own emotional reactions as if from a distance, then choose which ones deserve expression. Most don't. Most are just noise designed to destabilize you. And stability is power. I've been in situations where emotion would have destroyed me. Betrayals that could have consumed years in bitterness. Losses that could have paralyzed me with grief. And I felt all of it. Every wound, every cut. But I didn't let it decide my next move. I processed it cold. Analyzed it like data, asked the only question that matters. What does this information tell me about future behavior? Not what does it mean about my worth? Not what does it say about fairness? But what can I learn, and how can I use it? That's the difference between a cold mind and a wounded heart. A wounded heart seeks validation. A cold mind seeks advantage. And advantage is the only currency that compounds. Everything else depreciates. People fear coldness because it can't be manipulated. You can't guilt someone who doesn't operate on guilt. You can't shame someone who doesn't seek approval. You can't intimidate someone who's already accepted the worst outcomes and planned accordingly. Coldness is the death of leverage. And when you have no leverage over someone, you have no control. That's why they'll demonize it, call it sociopathic, call it heartless. But those labels are just fear. Fear that you've moved beyond their reach, that their usual tactics, emotional appeals, moral arguments, social pressure, don't work anymore. And they're right to be afraid. Because a person who operates cold is operating on a different level entirely. Where emotion is a tool, not a master. Where decisions are made on merit, not feeling. Where survival isn't negotiable. But here's what they don't tell you about coldness. It's not permanent. It's not a transformation into something inhuman. It's a state you enter when necessary. When the stakes are high. When clarity is required. When emotion would cost you everything. You can still laugh, still connect, still care, but you do it on your terms, with people who've earned it, in contexts where it's safe. Coldness is discernment in action. It's knowing when to be warm and when to be ice. And the people who master that balance don't just survive, they dominate. Because they're unpredictable in the best way. Warm when you expect cold. Cold when you expect warm. And that unpredictability makes them impossible to control, which means they're finally, completely free. And freedom is what you're building toward, one cold, calculated decision at a time. The battlefield moved. It's no longer out there in the world, it's inside your head. Every conflict, every power struggle, every attempt at dominance, it all starts and ends with emotional control. Whoever controls their emotions controls the interaction. Whoever loses composure first loses the game. This isn't philosophy, it's mechanics. When you react emotionally, you reveal your pressure points. You show where you're vulnerable. You give your opponent a blueprint for how to destabilize you next time. But when you're controlled, when nothing they do gets a rise out of you, you become a fortress, impenetrable. And fortresses aren't attacked, they're avoided, because the cost of engagement is too high. This is how you shift from being a target to being a threat. Not through aggression, through mastery. Mastery of the one variable that decides everything: yourself. Most people spend their lives trying to control others, trying to change them, fix them, make them see reason. But that's a losing strategy. You can't control another person's actions. You can only influence them. And influence without self-control is manipulation without teeth. It's desperation dressed as power. Real dominance starts internal. It's the ability to sit in discomfort without flinching, to hear criticism without defending, to face rejection without breaking. When you master that, everything else becomes simple, because you're no longer dependent on external validation to maintain your internal state. You generate your own stability, your own worth, your own rules. And people sense that. They sense that you're not playing the same game anymore, that you've elevated to a level where their opinions are irrelevant. And irrelevance is the ultimate form of control. You don't need to defeat them. You just need to not need them. I've watched people with every external advantage, money, status, looks, crumble under pressure because they never built internal control. They were powerful on paper but fragile in practice. One insult and they spiral. One setback and they collapse. One rejection and they're rewriting their entire identity seeking approval. That's not power. That's dependence with a better wardrobe. Real power is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to. It's the person who walks into a room and shifts the energy without saying a word, who listens more than they speak, who responds to chaos with calm, who makes decisions based on long-term consequence, not short-term emotion. That person isn't lucky. They're disciplined. And discipline is just emotional control practiced over time until it becomes automatic. Until calm isn't something you have to try for, it's just who you are. But emotional control isn't numbness. It's not disconnection, it's precision. It's knowing which emotions serve you and which ones sabotage you. Anger can be useful if it's cold and directed, channeled into action, not reaction. Fear can be useful if it sharpens your awareness, not paralyzes you. Even sadness has value if it deepens your understanding of loss and makes you more strategic about what you invest in. The problem isn't having emotions, the problem is letting them have you. When emotion drives, logic rides passenger, and passenger seat logic gets you into wrecks. But when logic drives and emotion provides data, you navigate cleanly. You make moves that compound. You avoid traps that others walk into blind. You become the person who sees 3 steps ahead because you're not distracted by what's happening right now. To dominate yourself is to dominate your reality, because reality isn't what happens to you. It's how you interpret and respond to what happens. 2 people experience the same betrayal. One person is destroyed by it. The other uses it as a filter to eliminate weak connections and build stronger ones. Same event, different emotional control, different outcome. And the person with control doesn't just survive, they evolve. They extract lessons, they upgrade their psychology. They become harder to hurt and easier to respect. And respect, real respect, isn't given because you're nice. It's given because people recognize you're not someone they can toy with. That messing with you has consequences. And consequences, when delivered with emotional control, are cold, calculated, inevitable. That's when you stop being prey. That's when the hunter inside you wakes up. And hunger is the next phase. Every wound was preparation. Every betrayal was a lesson in human nature. Every moment you felt broken was actually the moment something harder was being forged inside you. Pain isn't random, it's selective. It targets those with the capacity to evolve from it. The weak break under pressure, the strong harden, and the ruthless, they turn suffering into fuel. They don't ask why it happened. They ask what it taught them, what pattern it revealed, what weakness it exposed that needs to be eliminated. Pain is the universe's way of testing whether you deserve power. Most people fail the test. They become bitter, resentful, stuck in victimhood. But you're not most people. You're reading this because something inside you refused to stay broken. That refusal is the seed of ruthlessness. And ruthlessness is just clarity without mercy. The ruthless aren't cruel for sport. They're strategic by necessity. They understand that survival doesn't reward fairness, that the world operates on power dynamics, not moral principles, that niceness without boundaries is weakness in disguise. Ruthlessness is the willingness to prioritize your well-being over someone else's comfort, to say no without explanation, to cut people off without warning when they've proven themselves toxic, to make decisions that serve your goals even when those decisions disappoint others. This isn't evil. It's self-preservation at the highest level. And self-preservation requires a hardness that most people can't access because they were never hurt enough. Their pain was shallow, manageable. Yours wasn't. Yours was the kind that either kills you or rebuilds you into something unrecognizable. And you chose the rebuild. I spent years thinking pain was something to overcome, something to heal from and move past. But that's the soft interpretation. The real utility of pain is that it shows you exactly how much you can endure. It expands your tolerance for discomfort. It recalibrates your baseline. Things that would have destroyed you before now barely register. You've been through worse, survived worse, adapted to worse, and that adaptation is your advantage. While others are still flinching at minor inconvenience, you're operating in conditions that would break them. Pain gave you a higher threshold, a deeper well, a colder perspective. It trained you to function when others freeze, to decide when others panic, to move when others collapse. That's not luck. That's what happens when you stop running from pain and start mining it for lessons. The initiation ritual of the ruthless is always the same. Betrayal by someone trusted, public humiliation, loss of something you thought was permanent. These aren't accidents, they're filters. The world is sorting people into two categories: those who let trauma define them, and those who let it refine them. Most choose definition. They wear their wounds like badges. They build identities around their suffering. They stay stuck because stuck is familiar. But you chose refinement. You took the pain, analyzed it, extracted the pattern, and upgraded your psychology. You stopped being the person who could be hurt that way again, not because you built walls, but because you built discernment. You learned to spot predators before they strike, to recognize manipulation before it hooks, to exit situations before they become traps. Pain didn't just teach you what to avoid. It taught you who you are when everything is stripped away. And who you are is someone built for war. War isn't always external. Most of the time it's internal. It's the battle between the version of you that wants to stay soft and the version that knows soft gets devoured. Between the part that craves connection and the part that knows connection is a vulnerability. Between the instinct to trust and the evidence that trust is often misplaced. Pain forced you into that war, and wars produce two outcomes: casualties or soldiers. You became a soldier, not because you wanted to, but because survival demanded it. And now that you've been trained by pain, now that you've passed the test, you're no longer the same. You're sharper, colder, more aware. And awareness is the bridge between pain and power. The moment you stop seeing pain as punishment and start seeing it as preparation, you unlock something most people never access: the willingness to do what's necessary, without hesitation, without guilt, without mercy. And that willingness is the mark of the ruthless, the hunter, the one who no longer runs from shadows because he's learned to become one. Justice is a fantasy sold to keep you waiting for karma, waiting for apologies, waiting for the universe to balance the scales. But the scales don't balance. They tilt toward whoever has the weight to move them. The hunter doesn't waste time seeking fairness. He doesn't need validation that he was wronged. He already knows, and knowing is enough. What he seeks is control. Control over his environment, control over his reactions, control over who gets access to him and under what terms. Justice is external, conditional, and often never comes. Control is internal, absolute, and available right now. This is the shift. From hoping the world will correct itself to understanding that you are the only correction that matters. The game doesn't end when they apologize. It ends when you stop caring whether they do. Revenge is just pain redirected. It's the wounded trying to make others feel what they felt. But the hunter doesn't operate on emotion. He operates on dominance. And dominance isn't about hurting people. It's about positioning yourself so that their actions no longer affect your trajectory, so that whether they succeed or fail is irrelevant to your success. This requires a level of detachment most people never reach. They're too busy keeping score, too invested in making sure everyone knows they were right. But being right doesn't build empires. Being strategic does. And strategy means recognizing that your energy is finite. Every second spent focused on someone who hurt you is a second not spent building something they can't touch. The hunter knows this. He doesn't chase ghosts. He builds fortresses. I've seen people destroy themselves pursuing revenge. Years lost to bitterness. Opportunities missed because they were too focused on settling scores, and even when they got their revenge, it was hollow. Because revenge doesn't heal wounds, it just creates new ones. The satisfaction is temporary. The cost is permanent. But control compounds. Every decision you make from a place of self-sovereignty adds to your power. Every boundary you enforce builds your reputation. Every time you choose strategy over emotion, you become harder to manipulate. And the people who hurt you, they fade into irrelevance. Not because you forgave them, but because you outgrew the version of yourself that needed their acknowledgement. You moved into a space where they simply don't exist. And non-existence is a worse punishment than anything you could actively inflict. The hunter understands power dynamics at a cellular level. He knows that dominance isn't loud, it's quiet. It's the ability to walk away from anything that doesn't serve you without explanation. To let people wonder why you disappeared instead of giving them the closure they crave. To make decisions that prioritize your goals over their feelings without guilt. This isn't cruelty. It's clarity. Clarity that your life is yours to architect, that you don't owe anyone access, that the word no is a complete sentence. And when you operate from that level of clarity, something strange happens. People start treating you differently. They sense the shift. They realize you're not the same person they could manipulate before, that the old tactics don't work, and they either adjust or exit. Either outcome serves you. The final truth is this: whoever controls pain controls the world, not by inflicting it, by being immune to it. When you can sit in discomfort without breaking, when you can absorb attacks without reacting, when you can watch everything fall apart and still move forward with precision, you become untouchable. And untouchable people set the terms. They don't negotiate from weakness. They don't beg for respect. They don't explain their worth. They simply exist at a frequency that demands recognition, not through force, through presence, through the undeniable reality that they are no longer playing the game everyone else is stuck in. They've ascended to a different level, where emotion is data, where pain is fuel, where control is the only metric that matters, and control, once claimed, is never surrendered. The hunt is over. You won. Not because you destroyed them, but because you became someone they can no longer reach. And unreachable is the final form of power. You were never meant to stay broken. You were meant to be forged. Every wound, every betrayal, every moment of pain, it was all preparation. The trap was believing that suffering made you weak. The awakening is understanding it made you dangerous. You don't need their apology. You don't need their acknowledgement. You don't need justice. You need control, and control is what you have now, not over them, over yourself. And self-mastery is the only dominance that lasts. The hunter doesn't announce his presence. He doesn't explain his methods. He simply moves, silent, calculated, inevitable. Pain taught you the rules. Now you rewrite them. Watch the previous video. They'll destroy you if you reveal this, Machiavelli's code. You think you understand manipulation? You don't. Not yet. That video exposes the exact mechanisms they use to control you. The psychological patterns you've been blind to your entire life. If you skipped it, you're operating incomplete. And incomplete gets you killed. Go back. Watch it. Then return here. This is sequential knowledge, not entertainment. Write this in the comments. I control the game now. The wounded stay wounded. The awakened become weapons.